So this has been requested by a few of you that I cover this phone because of its value offering, what you get for the price. It is the Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus. So this model here has a 120 watt charger that is included in the box, a 5000 milliamp hour battery within it. It's got a pre-applied screen protector. You also get a case in the box and a USB cable, which a lot of brands are just simply not doing anymore. So we're off to a good start. It also does have a 200 megapixel main camera with optical image stabilization. This is the sensor that we've seen before in the 12T Pro. It's powered by the Dimensity 7200 Ultra. The base model has 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage, which is good. It's UFS 3.12 as well, so it's quite quick. An AMOLED screen, which is 120 Hz, up to 1800 nits peak brightness. I did get the purple version here, so this has that synthetic fake-like leather to it, which feels nice, got a bit of a texture to it, gives it a bit more grip, and I like the fact that it's not glass on the back because that's just going to shatter if you drop it. Now with the camera setup here, we do have the 200 megapixel sensor that was seen before in the 12T Pro. This has optical image stabilization. Then they've got that terrible, crappy 2 megapixel macro camera that you probably only ever use once, and the very old and dated 8 megapixel ultra wide camera that is, well, I think it's just their parts bin. They just keep using this part because they have so much stock and they need to use it up. It really should be a newer sensor, a newer lens. The quality is not really that good, but the main sensor can produce some good shots, as you'll see later on. And then we do have here the dual tone LED flash. So you can see the two different colors there. So it makes it stand out. It does make it look a little bit different. The frame around it is plastic, but it's a very solid feeling plastic. It feels almost like it is alloy, but it's got an inner alloy frame, but it is plastic on the outside here. Power button, volume up and down. Down below here, we've got our SIM tray that does take only 2 nano SIMs, microphone, loudspeaker, and this is, yes, USB 2.0. Sadly, you're not going to get any video out of this, and not fast with the transfer speeds, quite slow. So loudspeaker here, another little port for the loudspeaker, microphone, and our IR transmitter. It's good to see they do have that on board. Now, if you do look inside that Type-C port, you'll see that there's like a black inner in there, and that's what kind of gives it away that this is, in fact, yes, a plastic frame to it, and no antenna lines to as well. Now, the display, this is curved, and I wish it was flat, but it's not a bad panel at all. Now, it's OLED, 120 Hz, supports Dolby Vision. The fingerprint reader, just to demonstrate it, I don't like the location. It's a little too low. A lot of companies do this, but then some companies put the fingerprint reader about there, but it's pretty low, but you get used to using that. And overall, it's not a bad screen at all. I'll get into that in a little more detail soon. So 6.67 inches. And it is very smooth. It's covered with Gorilla Glass Victus, and because, yes, of the curvature, you will notice that the colors, they kind of shift out a little on the edges. Top and bottom bezels are nothing special, and here we do have a cutout, and that is a 16 megapixel camera. And the thickness of it, well, it's not too bad. It is just 8.9 millimeters. That's not including the cameras, which, yes, they do protrude quite a bit, as you can see. But overall, very good build quality. Not bad at all. Even though, yes, it's a plastic frame, it doesn't make it feel cheap. I do like the back on it. And overall, I think for the price point of around about $330 US, the build quality is excellent. So here's our screen in a little bit more detail, and I've turned up the brightness now, so it's certainly looking a lot better. So touch gestures, everything is very fast and fluid. Now I've checked out with the developer options that the UI is running at 120 frames per second, matching, of course, that 120 Hz refresh rate. So everything is nice and smooth. Gestures are working well, multitasking is good, and I haven't noticed any slowdown. The performance is great, and I think, yes, the 12 gigabytes of RAM is helping out. Even compared to 8, I think it's making it a little bit smoother. So options for the refresh rate, well, you've got custom here, and you can see you can select either 60 or 120 Hz. Unfortunately, there is no 90 Hz option, which the panel could support. They just need to add that setting, and I hope that Xiaomi does do that. It would be nice. You have color scheme here. You can adjust the white balance. The display, well, they claim it's 1800 nits peak. I can't measure that. I get just over 1300 nits, but here you can see now in direct sunlight, it holds up fine, the screen. You can see it well enough to send off those WhatsApp messages, answer text messages, and generally use the phone. So that is the important thing there. Now you can see with the display that the bezels are, well, they're okay. They're not the slimmest that I have seen out there. And considering that this is basically it's a mid-range phone, it's not bad at all. The only thing that bothers me slightly is the color shifting. So you can see when you put it on an angle, you can see it's a bit darker here and it gets a bit of a blue tint to it at certain angles because of the curvature to the screen. I really wish it was flat. And let me know in the comments, do you prefer flat screens? I've asked this many times before, and I'm pretty sure everyone normally does state that do actually prefer a flat screen. So it's all up, a very nice panel that Xiaomi selected for our Note 13 Pro Plus. Now I wanted to mention a little bit about the ROM here because it came with basically no bloatware pre-installed at all, and that is not normal. This is something that Giztop's done. Now I believe Giztop have run like a script or something to remove all the Chinese bloatware, so that is all gone when you get it if you buy it from them, which is very good. However, the stock gallery app was a victim of that script or whatever they did to remove the bloatware. They do keep this, which is the Get apps, which is your Xiaomi app store there, which is good. But I did like this stock photo app, but however, I just managed to get the Google one, so that's not really a problem at all. And you will see this. So if you go in here, you swipe over to the left, you're going to have some of this stuff in Chinese, but once you just remove and edit this, you can really tone down on that, and you will have yourself then a ROM that is basically bloat-free from any Chinese apps that just mean nothing to us outside of China, and any text or stuff popping up. There may be a notification or something that comes through in Chinese, say from the Mi Store app, but you can also control that. So things like WhatsApp and all that is going to work. You just need to give it the permissions, the auto start, and the ROM, yes, is only in Chinese and English, so bear that in mind. If you want it to be in French, Spanish, or other languages, unfortunately you're out of luck until the global version is released. So I've played some voice calls on it, and I've noticed that there's no issues with the call quality. It does seem to have active noise cancellation with it. I do like the haptics too as well in this phone. It's a nice little buzz. It's not super strong or anything, but it doesn't feel like some of those half-failed kind of attempt at haptics that's really not strong enough. It's quite a nice little pulse that it does give. I like it. Now the loudspeakers, there's one here and then out of the top, and the volume's good. It's loud, but it's not amazing quality. It's all right. There's not a lot of bass. It's lacking a bit in it, but for the price point, I think it's fine, these loudspeakers. Here's a sample at 100% volume. Now, if you keep that refresh rate forced onto the 120, which I do have now, I changed it back, so it's on 120. Everything is running really smooth and fast. Those animations do look good. And the settings menu here, no lag throughout the whole thing. Performance is excellent. So it is based off Android 12, of course, MIUI 14. And I will just show you here, just jump into a few things, that there was this patch that came through. So I've, of course, applied that. Whenever I review anything, I've got to be on the latest patch. It makes sense. So that's just a couple of bug fixes there, and the security patch level is September, which is very good, and they've optimized the touch for wet hands. So camera 2 API support is the full here for all of the cameras. Not that you'll be using that macro camera much or be able to improve the quality really. It's only 2 megapixels, so it does look a little bit washed out. I'll give you some samples too, of course, of the cameras later on in that segment of my review. So the screen does support, you can see here, the 90 Hertz. It's listed here with our info on DRM info. So Widevine level 1 cert, and the Dolby Vision is there. But right now with Netflix, it's not showing Dolby Vision until Netflix updates that. But you will get, yes, streaming all your video content there in full HD at least, which is good. I just hope too as well that Xiaomi does add a 90 Hertz option for the refresh rate. So Safetynet status, even though this is a Chinese import phone here, it's got, of course, the NFC on there. It does pass this. So you should be ready and right to go with that. So the Antutu score, it's not bad at all for a mid-range here. You can see it getting over 700,000 points. This is Antutu version 10, by the way. So the scoring has changed a little bit compared to version 9, which was a little bit lower. And you can see with this test, it did go up 6.6 degrees. The battery dropped 4%, which is pretty standard. But the thermals are actually really good on this device. So not a problem. And the storage here, very good speeds. We're looking at UFS 3.1 And they're good, really good to see in a phone like this, and especially at its price point, which is great. And when it comes out globally, I hope the price is going to be similar to what it is, and you can buy it in China. So running a stress test here, this is very demanding on the graphics. This is the Wildlife Extreme Stress Test. It goes for 20 minutes, so it loops 20 times because each run is a minute. And you can see the stability here, excellent. It only dropped down 0.5%, which is absolutely nothing. So basically there is no throttling. The thermals on this all check out. It's a very cool running chip. It's not powerful enough to generate enough heat, and the cooling that it has on this, Xiaomi has done an excellent job. So that's why there is no overheating with it at all. You can see it only got up to 36 degrees. Now you compare that to some of my other reviews where we'll see temperatures going up to even 50 degrees Celsius internally, which is not so good. And that's what happens with the 13T Pro that I reviewed. It's got better performance, a lot better, but it gets quite hot. Now, battery run time, this is, yes, a bit of an unrealistic test, but it's a test that I always do because it's a fixed looping benchmark. Because you imagine I do a test myself manually and I game a little bit longer, well, that's going to skewer the results, isn't it? It's going to mess with the results. And at least this being fixed and I keep the same fixed brightness, we can gauge this between other phones. So it went for 9 hours and 34 minutes. Realistically, you are looking at, yes, about 8 hours of on-screen time with this phone because of its large 5,000 milliamp hour battery. It really does have reasonably good battery life. However, the standby drain, I've noticed, isn't that great. So if you leave it overnight, you'll come back to the battery dropping down about 6 or 7%, and you've basically done nothing. Now, charge time, they claim 19 minutes. And yes, I always enable this through the settings, the supercharging or the faster charging mode, even though it warns you it'll generate a little bit more heat. Still took 29 minutes to go from 7% to 100. So something was throttling, I believe. Maybe the battery temperatures caused it to lower down the charging speed. However, I'm not complaining about 30 minutes. That's still very quick for a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. And I have repeated this test, and I always get around this kind of result. So I don't know what's going on, but it still is quick. And playing games that are demanding, like Genshin Impact here, not a problem at all for the Dimensity 7200 Ultra with the 12 gigabytes of RAM. I'm not really seeing any slowdowns or issues or major lags like that. Now, what you will notice is in certain areas when you load them in with the map that I see pretty much on every single device, including flagships, is you get the occasional little stutter as it loads in caches areas. Just like then, like this tiny little frame dip just for a split second. That is about it. Otherwise, this chipset is handling gaming just fine. And like I showed you with the 3D Mark results, is that it doesn't really get that hot at all. It gets a little warm around this area, but the frame doesn't start to get super hot like I noticed with the 13T Pro. So Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus cameras. This is the front-facing 16 megapixel camera, 1080p only, 30 frames per second, and 60 we do have that option, but there is no 4K. Now it does have electronic image stabilization. As you can see, the footage is looking really nice and smooth. The audio bitrate is 256 kilobits per second, so great to see it's not down really low at 96 kilobits per second, which has happened a lot in the past. Our main camera here, so this is the 200 megapixels with optical image stabilization. You can shoot 4K 30, but no 4K 60, 1080p 30 and 60. And look at how steady this footage is looking. The image stabilization, optical and electronic, is looking really good. This is just me walking along at a normal kind of pace. Now jogging, just to show you how reasonably steady it is. You can see sometimes it jolts and moves around a little bit, but overall I'm impressed with the stabilization. But it would be nice to have a 4K 60 option, which this chipset can handle. Ultra wide footage now. So this is that same 8 megapixel camera that we've seen for just so long. I mean, they've just used this part over and over and over again. They must have bought so much stock. They've got a huge surplus Xiaomi. They need to use it up. Not a great sensor, and we only get with the phone just 1080p 30, no 1080p 60 even. Now it is using electronic image stabilization, which is pretty good and steady. But if you look at the corners of the video, if you crop in a little bit, no, not very good at all, the quality. Now for our samples, the selfies tend to look alright, not bad at all. Stitching is okay. The rear camera, I've noticed, tends to be warm, the white balance. This is it again. So the 200 megapixel camera, 2x digital zoom, for some reason is warmer, I don't know why. The shot of my cat here, Vera, looks really good, lots of detail.
And this photo is the 2 megapixel macro camera, not great at all, looks a bit washed out. And selfies are great, but a little bit warm, the colors, and the stitching around my daughter's hair could be a little bit better. Low light performance for a mid-range phone turned out to be quite good, as you can see from these photos. This was shot at around 10 PM and it still came out really good. It was looking a lot darker than that. This has a lot of noise to it. If it's very dark, the photos tend to be quite noisy.
So as you saw from those samples that, yeah, the main camera can take some decent photos, but there's no 4K 60 video. It's only 4K 30, and the ultra-wide and the macro camera, what are they doing in this phone? They should not be there at all. It should be a much better ultra-wide sensor. Maybe give it just autofocus, then it can act as a macro camera. You wouldn't have to use that garbage 2 megapixel sensor, which looks really washed out. So the screen is good, even though it is curved, it's a nice screen. The build quality is very nice. I like the synthetic leather back. 5,000 milliamp hour battery is great. Charge times, well, I'm getting nowhere near that 19 minutes that they do claim. And yes, I've enabled that faster charging option in the battery settings. I always do that, but I never seem to be able to get their claimed charge times. I don't know why. Maybe it's my ambient temperatures. It's only about 25 degrees in here, so that shouldn't be a problem. Shouldn't actually be that. So was I able to get onto 5G? No, unfortunately not. I'm on 4G, and it's 4G plus that it shows, and I get onto LTE band 20. So data speeds they've been okay, but they haven't been my typical 4G or LTE band 20 kind of speeds. They seem to be a little bit lower there, so be careful of that. Check out the bands before you go and get this. So the UI performance is fast, and I love the fact that GizTop, they debloated the ROM for me. I don't know if it was just for me when they sent it out, or maybe they all come like that. So that was good. There was no junky applications at all, but if you get it not debloated, the ROM will have a lot of Chinese apps on there that are just going to be useless to anyone outside of China, or if you don't speak or know Chinese, but you can delete and get rid of most of those anyway. So all up, it is a good phone. It's just that ultra-wide camera, the macro camera, and then the 5G, well, it's going to be, I think, difficult for some people to be able to get 5G with this phone. You'll probably be just on 4G with it. So thanks a lot for watching my review here of the Redmi Note 13 Pro Plus.